Hello.
Hello.
First things first, let us know if you can hear us. Hopefully today both mics are working, but we never know until you let us know.
My mic is set to green. Hopefully I can be heard. Hello, everyone. Okay, they're saying hello, so I guess they can hear us.
I feel like that's a good sign, yeah.
Yeah, maybe they're just saying hello randomly into the endless void. As one does. There we go.
Hooray!
Hooray! Hurrah. Okay, cool.
Excellent. So I am joined here by Paul today, who's going to be our solo special guest.
Yeah.
Because I thought it would be really good to have you on to speak about the segment design and the changes that will be coming to procedural generation, which is what our most recent dev blog was about. So, but we can go into more detail here, and Paul has brought some pictures as well.
I have. I've got diagrams and everything. Some of them are really exciting. Shall I just talk?
Yeah.
Or do you want an intro or?
No, I think I just introed. So unless you'd like me to point out anything else.
All right. Okay. So this is a really big deal. We've been working on this for a couple of months, and I'm going to assume nobody's read the blog, which is probably a silly assumption, but
a good way to start.
It'll catch a few people. So what we've been working on, based on a lot of feedback we had, is changing the way we generate the world of Some of the Skies. In order to make it more coherent, less empty, and just more interesting to travel around. Now, the way it used to work, or the way it works now for people who are playing it at the moment, is... Hang on, let me get a diagram. Lottie, could I have the first slide, please?
Da, da, da.
Right, you should be able to see a really exciting target-shaped thing. This is the world space for one of our regions. This is for the region, and it's divided into a hub area, an inner circle area, and an outer circle area, with Winchester obviously in the middle, and then various things spread out. Now, how it works at the moment is we create little scenes in Unity. So, for instance, if you have Port Prosper, that's a scene, or Titania, that's a scene. And then we also have smaller scenes which are called decorations. And these are generally things that you can't interact with other than run into. But you know, they make the world feel a bit more alive. So when you're sailing around, you'll see, you know, rocks, beanstalks, ancient ruins,
Weird tube things.
lots of weird tube things, mushrooms, stuff like that. And the way, because we want the world experience to change from captain to captain, what happens is we tell the game engine that a port, for instance, is in an inner ring or an outer ring, and we tell it what kind of decorations ought to be in that ring by a sort of tagging system, and then it just dots them around and does a couple of passes on it so there's a reasonable distribution. And then you get what you have in the game now. So you sail out from Winchester, which is always in the same place, and you might run into Port Avon, Titania, and as you approach it, you'll see the decorations that the Proc Gen system has put in. So this is a really easy system to work with. It's much easier than the one we did for Sun and Sea.
Which I've heard horror stories about.
Well, there was a lot of data input, and everything had a coordinate. And because we sometimes shuffled the tiles around, sometimes had 3 sets of coordinates.
Oh, so man.
Just mad data entry. We don't have to do any of that now.
Hooray!
And it's good for variety, because you never quite know what you're going to get from one minute to another, but it does have problems. We felt it was quite hard to get the maths in such a state that it was giving us a good distribution of stuff to emptiness. And although we had the sort of tagging system, it sometimes felt like you had quite jarring transitions. So one minute you'd be sailing past a rock, and the next it would be like a bronzewood forest, and then it'd be a bit of fungus and so on. And we found, the art department were finding that it was quite hard to make these decorations so that they all worked in conjunction with everything else. And because we've got a game that's in space, but it's weird space and it's got trees, it becomes quite hard for, I think, for a new player to understand what's going on without the sort of more coherent sense of world building. I'm just going to... I've completely forgot I had slides. I had loads of slides. Illustrating what I've just said. Next one is okay. So this is the map as it appears at the moment. Obviously, I've removed the fog of war.
Ooh, special powers.
Yeah, but you can see here what I've been talking about. So new interest is here off in the middle. Oh, my mouse pointer doesn't work. You'll just have to imagine my mouse pointer. And then you've got Titania and Port Avon, each taking up a segment. Actually, yeah. And then these little generic things here. So I've got a little tree, little bit of ruin, bit of rock, and so on.
Meaning the lighter blue objects on the map.
That's right.
For those not looking at the screen that Paul is looking at.
Sorry. The decorations are, there are lots of them, but we tended to use, generic icons to indicate them. So there might be sort of 4 or 5 beanstalks, but there's only one beanstalk icon. So it gives you a rough idea of what you're going past. And here, next one, is a sample decoration as they work at the moment. So this is a rock with another couple of rocks underneath it. So that's what they look like by themselves. God, I'm waiting. There's such detail. I've got hundreds of these. So yeah, what I've got here is a view in the Unity scene engine. Paul's a bit quieter than Haley, it says.
I
thought I was talking non-stop.
Well, I think they mean volume-wise.
All right.
So I will hopefully not make all of you deaf and slightly move my mic more towards the middle of us and hope that works. But they can definitely hear you, so keep talking. Cool. It's fine.
This is sort of a mocked-up example of how a bit of Proc Gen works at the moment. So in the middle, you've got Port Prosper there, and then I just popped in 3 little decoration scenes around it. Oh yeah, sorry, next one. This is slide number 4. And obviously, when you're in the game, there's a sort of starry background, so this wouldn't be as sort of grey and gritty as this, but you can see there's not much in the way of sort of coherent connection between these lumps of decoration. So,
if we go to the next one,
I'm not quite sure why I put that one there. Let's go to the next one anyway. So what we've done is we're going to change the way we do this. We are now. I'm going to go back to the first one. Can we go back to number 1, Lottie?
We're keeping Lottie on her toes today because she has to switch through all the photos, so bear with us.
Yay! So, great target. So, what we're doing now is we are taking each of these little segments, so there's 9 of them in all, and considering them as larger scenes, as sort of little regions, which means that we can do a lot of fun stuff. We can place the port, and then we can create a sympathetic environment around it. And we can add, things to visit, and we can sort of specify where our agents are going to spawn. And the end result means that we end up designing for a space that looks like slide number 5, which for some reason has got a big "Don't go there" sign on it.
It's very welcoming.
I think that's just because I took it as a screenshot. So this is a typical outer ring segment. And we might put sort of a port on the left, and then we'll have a sort of collection of derelict buildings that you travel through, and then an asteroid field, and then a collection of monsters on one side, and so on. So we can do a lot more curation of the experience. And if I move on to slide 6,
which is one of my
it's a real
favorites.
PowerPoint kind of deal, this, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think it helps because obviously trying to explain this without pictures would just sound mad, wouldn't it?
Yeah. This is really the fun part. The way we do this is we get a designer and a writer and an artist, and we lock them in a room for a day, a virtual room. We're all sort of sitting in different places, and we come up with sort of a map of this segment, which is great fun. It's a real sort of D&D kind of thing.
So that's why you guys lock yourself away for a whole day.
Yeah, it's such fun. I mean, what we've got here. This is number 6. This is a little lump. I didn't want to give away the whole thing. This is a little lump of what is now the Traitor's Wood segment. So before, you may have visited Traitor's Wood in the game, and it's sort of foresty around the port area. But now the entire segment is a giant forest, and we've sort of moved the Regent's Grave, so it's sort of its own thing, and we've sort of said, okay, so we'll have skyscrapers turning up here, waterfalls up here, and so on and so forth. So it's much more like a sort of a fantasy landscape. Oh, you like my Thames? Thanks. They're fun to draw. So yeah, so the last couple of months we've been doing that, and then once they're designed, we start putting them into Unity. And if we look at the next one, which is number 7.
Also, can I just pause to say they were wondering were those waterfalls in the last picture?
Yes, they were.
Excellent. Sorry to break your train of thought.
Yeah, no,
but now we're on the next slide anyways.
That's cool. Again, I haven't given you the whole thing, but this is about a third of the nature reserve segment. And if you can see there in the middle where the arrow is, that's the port as was, which again you may have visited before. So you can see the segment is quite a bit bigger. And there's some design going on here. So over on the right of the port itself, we've got these sort of fields of spooky, funky flowers, and then there's a sort of ruin field over here on the left, and the glowing things, which I'm not going to tell you what they are yet. And then we've got some fungus and some beehives. And the thing down at the bottom, which is the Isambard line, which we'll talk a bit more about later, but is a sort of a giant destroyed folly of engineering that has fallen into ruin over the years.
And those on the map are kind of like 3 parallel, or what would you say?
That's right.
Yeah,
There's
lines
some little,
that are kind of at the bottom left and right of the map.
That's right. And your screen's gone really yellow. It's weird.
I'm sure she would love that.
Okay, next one. This might give you a better idea of how it works. I'm guessing pretty much everyone who's played the game at all will have visited New Winchester. It's obviously the hub port, the first hub in the game. This is what it looks like as a segment design. So you've got the port itself in the middle as was before, but as you can see the suburbs stretch out quite a way further. And they've got watchtowers around the edges and sort of there are various rocks and claims. One of the fun things about doing this is it gives us a lot more space to label areas. I think one of the most fun bits of Sun the Sea is popping labels of Kickstarter backers on sort of appropriate features and naming things and so on. And with the system we had before, we couldn't really name anything except stuff exactly around ports. It was a bit boring. So now we can label the whole world, and there's more of a sense of a real place that you're passing.
I'm sure for our backers, that's the most exciting part too, because they're going to be, zooming around trying to find theirs.
Yes, they're not all in the reach. Quite a few of them in there. So the next one. So we had to change the map when we did this because the map worked the same way as the rest of it. It followed the procedural generation and put icons where scenes were. But of course now, because the whole thing is more designed, we can have an actual map of the actual rocks. I should say, I haven't said this yet, it's really important, is that there is still a deal of shuffling going on. It's not the same map every time. So the hub stays the same, but the inner segments can appear in any of 3 spots, and the outer segments can appear in any of their 5 spots. So when you die, if you haven't visited somewhere, there's a good chance it'll all move around. So yeah, this is the new look map. This is kind of a first iteration, but I think I'm already a lot happier with it. It feels more like a place. You can see that the labels sort of extend a bit further out. I think I've got another one here actually.
It definitely gives a sense of helping players to really remember where they were, because now they can see it.
And we've got lots of other things we can label as well. So, we have a sort of particularly unusual fungus field and someone with a name that sort of sounds mouldy, then, that's a great fit. So, so a lot of my time is spent looking through the back of spreadsheet and going, that name sounds rocky. That name sounds like a waterfall. And Chris has done an amazing job of taking people's details and converting them into sort of sympathetic sounding names.
Which, is astounding considering how many names are on that list.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that is what we're doing. We're doing the same for the other regions as well. I'm really excited about it. It feels like we get to do a lot more sort of close-up level design. We had a lot of conversations about the player journey through a segment, which was something we couldn't really address before.
Yep.
I mean, we still, we don't know which direction you're coming in from or where you're going, so we have to guess a lot. But we can do things to sort of direct player attention to interesting bits in the scene. So we can do stuff with light. Chris, you joined us. Hello. They're brilliant, Chris.
Were you saying before, Chris? Because that's what I'm doubting mostly.
What was I saying? What was
I was just thinking, what question was I going to ask you, and I've forgotten as well. So unfortunately, we're both in the same place of not knowing.
Well, let us open it up to questions from the audience. Oh yeah, I was talking about level design. So, for instance, if we've got the site of a ghastly monster massacre in one of the segments, and it's a bit off to the side of the sort of optimal path. So there's lots of things we can do to draw attention to that. We can have light shafts that sort of point in that direction. We have little buoys that can indicate a potential path.
That is the particular statement that always confuses me as the American.
Oh, well,
because whenever you say that, I picture like the opposite of Little Sisters from BioShock.
Right, gotcha.
In creepy space, showing you the way.
Buoys for our American cousins. Yeah. So yeah, and obviously this hasn't gone out to players yet. So I'm really interested to see what the feedback is like. You all seem quite cheerful. Does this all make sense?
Yeah, feel free to ask any questions, and if you do, it's very helpful if you can put @Failbetter at the front so that we can see it, because it'll appear bold for us.
I whacked through this, didn't I?
I think there's one more slide, slide 10, but it's at the beginning, confusingly.
I see it. Right, okay. Oh yeah, the really good one. Okay, so before I don't put this up just yet, Luffy.
It's a trick, Claudia.
So to give you an idea of what the whole region looks like when we've done this design process, I took all the maps we made during the segment design sessions, and I put them into the target rig and made an enormous map of the whole region, which we can kind of show you now.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun.
Except obviously if I actually showed it to you, then
Then you'd know where everything is.
it would ruin the game.
Sort of, because it would still be swapped around a bit. But
Yeah, but there's way too much detail in there. But feel free to try and sort of break the pixelization on this. But that's roughly what the reach looks like. So that's our first region. And you can see there we've done a bit of colour work with it as well, because it's nice. We like to have a sort of sense of continuity between the segments. And we're doing more of that as we move on to Albion, which is very different looking.
I think that will be when this sort of system really shines as well, because they've only been bumping around in the goldfish bowl of the Reach so far, and obviously everything feels like a coherent sort of theme within the Reach. But once we put Albion next to it, I feel like it's going to be amazing to be able to see the contrast between the two regions. And now that we have these segments that kind of blend together but are slightly different, seeing them next to an entirely different region will be amazing.
I think, yeah, and Albion, the journey from the Reach to Albion is kind of one of the sort of the core thematic things we've got going on in the game. So you go from the sort of wild, overgrown frontier, and obviously the player journey in the Reach is like you start in the middle and you head outwards. But the player journey in Albion, first time you do it, is going to be you start out at the end and you come into the middle. So you'll have this gradually encroaching sense of Victorian industry and civilization. So it'll be like a reverse. Oh, we got some questions. When segments are generated, is the actual angular alignment random as well? So for the particular segment in your right, yes, no, but that does. They have fixed spots. They don't actually rotate. I was confused about this at first. They shuffle. So if you have here's segment 1, here's segment 2. If I move segment 2 around to here, that doesn't mean that segment 1's going to be here. So they all shuffle.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Working with circles is really hard. One of the really big decisions we had to make about this was whether assets, the rocks and ports and things themselves would stay in the same alignment when things moved. And we looked at both sides of it, and eventually we decided no, because it just feels weirder when they're not.
I can imagine.
And there's this really nice sort of, when you visit, for instance, if you're really used to visiting Port Prosper up in the northeast, the first time you visit it in the southwest, you're like, where the hell am I? Where's the dock? So there's this nice sense of discombobulation and exploration that we didn't have before. And we tend to draw stuff with lighting from a particular angle.
Like the circus, for example.
Yeah, and so that occasionally led to some weirdnesses. We had to redo the Regent's Grave because it just did not make sense at any other angle. But generally speaking, I think it's working quite well. What else? Would it be possible for the whole thing to rotate slowly? No, not a chance. I've had similar ideas to this, but it would be monstrously difficult.
I think the next question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think the answer is yes, but you could prove me wrong too.
The port.
Yes.
Yes, it is possible. It doesn't happen very often. In fact, we'll have some segments which don't have ports in at all. We're thinking about doing some wild segments. So just places that are hunting grounds and are full of loot and danger, but there's no sort of safe spot. There is, I think, one segment in the route that has 2 ports in it, but they're sort of thematically connected, so it kind of makes sense. Generally speaking, they'll have 1 port. Yeah.
I remembered my question.
Right.
Before earlier, you were talking about things that you might come across within segments, but I don't think yet we've used the words spectacles and discoveries, but how does that play into these segments?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be careful talking about this because we're still working on it, but it is interesting. So while the segment mapping itself is fairly fixed, there will be in each segment a number of areas where we where we use something more akin to the old Proc Gen system, which we're calling discoveries. And they could be anything. So you might run across a wreck that's full of sort of exciting weaponry, or a space egg that you can take on board if you're feeling brave. We've got lots of them planned, and they'll be themed to their areas. We might have sort of homesteads around Prosper that you can visit. The thing with the discovery is you can go up to it and you can interact with it in some way. So that might mean that it'll fire off a story, or it might just be just a crate of fuel, which would be
helpful,
useful to you at that time. What's your favourite segment so far and why? Your favourite little story detail on the segment. Oh, that's really good. It's Chris. Okay.
Damn him and his genius.
Thanks for the softball, Chris. My favourite segment so far is Trace Word, which also has my favourite little storytelling detail in it. Or at least it's supposed to. I'm not sure if I've actually put it in yet.
Keeping that one for yourself, are you?
Well, we wanted to... we've been using the buoys as a sort of helpful navigational thing, but they do tend to say civilization. And Trader's Wood we wanted to be really wild. But we wanted something that would work in a similar way. So the wood section has, or will at some point have, wisps. Which are just little, floaty things. But the great thing with them is that while following buoys will...
I've infected you.
Following buoys... following buoys is generally a safe thing to do. Generally leads you... But the wisps are a bit more mischievous, so following wisps might lead you into terrible trouble.
I like this already.
Yeah. And more than 9 ports in the reach, so some must share a segment there. Yes, you're right. Can I tell you? I guess I can tell you. Port Avon and Titania are in the same segment. Currently, traits of character have self-filter always visible. You don't actually hide them until the port in question has been reached. Seems up to them all as well as not sure. Chris might be able to help you with that one. He's looking into it. There you go.
Chris is so speedy with these answers.
One of the other things that we are sort of looking at the moment is the gaps between the segments. At the moment, they feel a little bit empty, but we've got some ideas for dealing with that. I mean, it's possible if you really wanted to, you could say, "Oh, we've still got the region map up, the one with the sensor on it."
Yes, you do.
Yeah, you could, for instance, sail from, you could sail, you see the little white lines. These are the bits between the segments. I mean, you could sail just around them and see nothing at all, which would be boring, but, safe. And we're having to be quite careful with how we deal with those because we've got a lot of parallax stuff going on, and we don't want things to pop too much when they spawn in. What else we got?
Yeah, please ask us as many questions as you can.
Yeah.
Although I will not keep Paul here forever, as tempting as that may be. But I'm sure he has art to get back to.
Yes. No, it's cool. I'm happy to be here.
And I think a lot of the comments we got in regards to this blog post and the change in segment design, people had a lot of questions about how many ports were in the reach and did we keep any back. But no, all 11 ports in the reach are what you're going to get. However, I think it's important to understand that, of course, you guys are designing everything to be played as a whole.
Yeah.
So obviously players only get to explore the reach for now. But when you guys sit in a room and plan the segments and all the systems like trade and everything, that's designed so that you'll be traveling back and forth through these regions.
Yeah, and we move them around a lot at the design stage because we have to think about the region as a whole as well as the sort of segments themselves. So, there are things that sometimes make more sense being out on the edge. It wouldn't have made much sense for us, for instance, to have the nature reserve as an inner ring because it's supposed to be sort of, like the far reaches. Yeah. Similarly with Prosper sort of acts as a sort of twin to New Winchester, so you need a bit of distance between them. And there are economy considerations. Some trips need to be longer, some trips need to be shorter. I didn't talk about spectacles today. Maybe we should talk about that.
Yeah, definitely.
This is Again, I'm not sure how much I can say. So while discoveries, you'll tend to see them more than once, I think. Spectacles are kind of unique things, and they will have an effect on your terror. And they'll tend to be sort of larger and spookier things. So things like wells and dying stars and
all the fun bits.
Spooky stuff. But again, I'm reluctant to talk about those too much because we're still working out how they work.
Yeah. We've mentioned them before in a more general sense, so fans should have an idea of what they are, but the specifics of what they are is probably what we haven't mentioned, so that's fine.
Well, we're taking a long look at how Terra works over the next couple of weeks, and the spectacles are very tied into that. So we're going to have lots of various different Terra states. This may be a dumb question I've been asked already, but since areas of circles, what will be in between? Death, boredom, playful. Well, when you give me those three options, I'm not sure how I could choose. What's between them probably is a loading screen. Because if you can head out of a segment in any direction, then you've got no guarantee you're going to hit another one. And there's nothing massively interesting about just sailing through empty space for hours and hours hoping you run into another segment. So I think we're probably going to be moving the player or giving them a suggestion that they've taken a long journey to arrive at the next segment. But we're still going around on that one. So I think probably once you leave a segment, you'll be taken to the next one, so you don't sort of waste your time. If quest goes me to Prosper, please have it tell me to leave me. Okay, fine. These are very specific questions. Also, mostly for Chris, I think.
Yes, that's why it's always good to have him in the chat. I think content questions come up more than anything else, really.
Yeah, no, fair enough. That's cool.
But unless you guys have any more questions, then we'll probably start to wrap things up because we've been chatting for half an hour now. but it's easy to talk about this sort of thing. We're hoping that it will be in by the end of the month.
Yep.
And we definitely are looking forward to all your feedback on this.
Yes, very much so. So yeah.
Excellent. I will wait for the delay to give us any last chance questions, but otherwise, thank you for having me come on and
absolute pleasure.
Showed all the diagrams.
when we've got this out, hopefully we'll be able to play a bit of it on screen.
Yes, definitely.
And give you an idea of it in motion.
Not the next podcast, but the one after that, we're hoping to be able to do that.
Oh, that's actually a really interesting question. In Summer Sea, the bottom of the Z was always part of the character of the area, the opening mouths, etc. You can choose something like open space. Well, I think we're doing a lot of that with the sort of lower parallax levels. This feels in some ways more similar to Submariner than Summer Sea because in Summer Sea vanilla, you had the sea, and there was the character of the place was mostly about the land. But obviously we can have things, floating in space that are characterful, but we can also put stuff underneath. And we're having quite a lot of fun putting stuff in a deep background that just feels enormous.
You can tell when they cackle from the other room. I think there's 2 instances you could probably find in our development blogs, because we have shown, well, actually one is in the trailer where you can see something in the background that looks like it's been destroyed. And then in one of the development blogs, we've definitely shown a GIF of a thing that is swirly. I don't know.
I think we can confirm. Writhing tentacles in the deep are coming to the game because I wouldn't. That was kind of my deal breaker feature. Do you think there'll be trouble combining this with stuff like racing challenges and trading special events and balance? No, I think we've got some good answers to that stuff. We'll be talking about this in a later podcast, but we've got some exciting changes to how trade works coming up that will make it hopefully more interesting and more story-ish, which is what we always try and do. I think we're not sort of we're not just about like making a trading sim. We want trade to be a story. Will this fix the scaling problem and disappearing bugs appearing from the current? Yes, I really hope so.
Which is why we haven't fixed it until this point, because it was connected to all this work that we've been doing.
Those problems you've been having are directly related to the system as it works at the moment. So, sorry, but yeah, it will be fixed.
And then to answer a few quick questions, Indigo, we are keeping the Halloween decorations up until we are able to put the Christmas decorations up. And that's on Kira's request, and nobody will fight her over it. The meta question about doing a podcast for Fall in London. These podcasts are specifically for Sunless Skies, but I wouldn't throw out that ever being an option if we wanted to. But for now, just Sunless Skies. And what was the other one that I felt that I could answer? I don't remember now. Oh,
you still see space at the end of the day. It's not quite the Z periodic, is it? Yep. Well, I mean, I guess the proof will be in the playing. I think it's a very rich background world, and it's going to get richer as we go along. So hopefully it'll be enough.
Cool. Well, I think that is all for us today, but if you have any other questions, always feel free to ask on social media or any of the forums that you guys are on, and usually Leslie Ann or myself will be able to get back to you. So until the next time, we shall release Paul and start winding things down on the podcast. She says, looking pointedly at Lottie, who's in control of the computer.
Take us off the air.
So bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice weekend.